Israeli officials have confirmed that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's security cabinet has approved plans to expand its offensive in Gaza. They're said to include the possible seizure of the entire Palestinian territory. The military has already been calling up tens of thousands of reservists. Critics say the renewed offensive, which began after a ceasefire with the militant group Hamas collapsed in March, has done little to bring the remaining Israeli hostages back home. In a separate development, Yemen's Houthi rebels say the US has carried out 10 strikes in and around the capital Sanaa. That's after pledges of retaliation from Israel following a missile attack by the group. The missile landed near the Ben Gurion airport outside of Tel Aviv, injuring several people. The attack was claimed by the Houthis, who are backed by Iran. They say they're acting in solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Air carriers, including British Airways, Lufthansa and Delta, suspended some upcoming flights. The attack caused panic among travellers in Tel Aviv. All right, let's get more insights on that story with Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes. Good to see you, Shani. The Israeli cabinet has approved the expansion of the war, including, quote, the conquest of the Palestinian territory. That's an incredibly strong word.
Indeed, and it seems to be the one magic solution that the Israelis are aiming at. They think or hope that once they get more territory and they hold the territory, they will finally find some breakthrough in this ongoing war for 19 months with very little achievements for Israel. In its, there's great, unbelievable destruction in Gaza. The amount of, the Palestinian death toll is unbearable. But at the same time, when you look at the Israeli perspective and their wish to achieve their goals, which is eradicating Hamas as a force controlling the Gaza Strip, they are far from achieving that, and there are also still 59 Israeli hostages. Only part of them only are alive, but still kept in Gaza. So these two goals that Israel has had to bring them back, Israel is far from that. And what's there?
And what's left to attack? What is left?
There's Gaza is inhabitable. It's mostly brought to rubble. But Israel wants now to bring most of the civilians again into the southern part of the Muasi, where they were altogether up until the recent ceasefire was taking place, and then clearing more way for more military maneuvers in the rest of the Gaza Strip. We need to understand basically what Israel is saying is our current policy is not working, and we are trying, seems to be like a very failing, military operation, to find new solutions. I'm not sure how far it will take Israel, because Hamas seems to be very, standing strong behind its clear demands, and the only way to end the war is to bring the release of the hostages by releasing, bringing a complete end to the war. So further escalation. There's also fear in the military will actually bring, will be counterproductive in the sense that it's going to risk the lives of the hostages. But Netanyahu seemed to be adamant to go at that direction. He was hinting at that for a long time, and this is where we are now.
He's been hinting for a long time, but this is the timing. The decision comes hours after a Houthi missile lands near the airport. Has this incident somehow provided Netanyahu the chance to justify the expansion?
Well, not directly, but there's no doubt that the pressure in Israel, seeing that Israel has been, in the summer it seemed to have had great achievements in breaking down Hezbollah and some of other, Israeli main enemies. And so it seems like this has been, these achievements have not been really used very much, and Israel's standing or its deterrence in the region is eroded by the constant attacks of the Houthis that keep on at it. And we need to understand, hitting so close at the Israeli International Airport, the only international airport in the state, it's a very major failure for Israel. This is a strategic, one of Israel's most top strategic destinies. I mean, the fact that this has happened puts a lot of pressure on Netanyahu to show that he has a strong arm, not just, vis-a-vis his, internally, but also to the Arab world, to the world in general. And he is there also in a bind because the Americans have asked him to let them take the lead. And, he sees that the Americans are operating not strong enough, I think, as much as he would like, but he cannot really say much to Trump, and he's very much dependent on him in so many technical aspects of fighting the Houthis because of the distance between Yemen and Israel. And now we're seeing this slow rift opening between Netanyahu and what seems to be Trump's agenda, who's shifting away from Netanyahu and his right-wing government.
Another decision taken by the Security Cabinet, also approving a new plan to resume aid deliveries to Gaza. Is there any more information we know about that?
Well, first of all, conditions in Gaza are extremely dire. We're talking about immediate fear of hunger, a threat of hunger for children and thousands of people after Israel has stopped aid for more than 2 months now. This needs to be clear, and Israel understand something needs to happen. They claim that they stop the humanitarian aid because they want to weaken Hamas, because Hamas has control over the reserves, and once they are depleted, Hamas loses its grip over the civilian population. However, this plan that was approved now it talks about civilian companies, American companies, to be distributing this aid and preventing Hamas from getting any hold of it, because Israel claims it's being weaponized by Hamas. However, this is not to be implemented immediately. Israel keeps on, using humanitarian aid as a weapon, as leveraging that in this war, and it seems like no good news for Gazans on this front, or any front, actually, for now.
Middle East analyst Shani Rozanes, thanks so much.
You're welcome, Anthony.
For more on this, let's cross over to Middle East analyst Laura Blumenfeld in Washington, D.C. She's a senior fellow at Johns Hopkins University. Laura, Israel's air defense systems are meant to intercept missiles. Any theories on how this one got through?
Well, it's a numbers game to a certain extent. I mean, in the past 48 hours, if you think about it, it's the fourth attack by Houthis sending ballistic missiles over to Israel. There were millions of Israelis who spent their days in shelters, including Haifa to the north and Jerusalem, which is the heart, of course, of their country. And yeah, they hit a bullseye with Ben Gurion Airport. It's a failure for Israel's defenses. 3 missiles had been stopped, but the 4th one slipped through. It's not only a failure for Israel, though, it's a failure for the United States. They clearly haven't deterred the Houthis. They've launched a kind of intensive military raids on the Houthis to try to deter them, and obviously they haven't succeeded as well.
Now, Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu saying Israel will seek revenge not just against the Houthis, but also against their backer, Iran. What could a revenge against Iran look like?
Well, look, I think that they're going to strike against both, and it's interesting to use the word revenge. Israel's defense minister said, whoever harms us, we will harm sevenfold. It sounds a little biblical, an eye for 7 eyes. But both Netanyahu and the opposition parties in Israel agree that this is not Yemen, this is Iran. I think things will continue to go bump in the night, as they say, or boom in the night in Iran. Whether it's missile fuel depots or factories that assemble the parts of these ballistic missiles, drones perhaps. I don't think there'll be any kind of all-out public strike that Israel will take responsibility for while the United States is engaged in these nuclear negotiations with Iran. They don't want to disrupt that. Israel doesn't want to be seen publicly disrupting that. Today, they had a small victory where President Trump said for the very first time that the U.S. goal in these negotiations are for full dismantlement of their program, that kind of Libyan-style goal, a full dismantlement that Netanyahu set really as his marker of success for negotiations. I think Israelis feel like Iran is much more dangerous at the negotiating table than on the battlefield. They're known to be really tough negotiators who, according to many in the Middle East, have got the better of Americans and of Europe in these negotiations, who they see as gullible and naive.
Now, Israel, military action on multiple fronts. The military is currently planning to expand its war in Gaza, despite a humanitarian crisis that's caused international outrage. What is Netanyahu's political strategy with this?
Well, it's kind of a two-pronged strategy. They are announcing that they're going to expand military operations in Gaza. If you watch Netanyahu talk about it, he talks with a fist about kind of strangling Hamas, but it's he bangs on the desk. Watch the tape when he talks about absolute victory. And I think that his philosophy is there is little pity for victims in the Middle East. No one's going to feel sorry for Israel. No one feels sorry for those hostages. We need to apply military pressure. Of course, that's a controversial approach. The second prong, though, of that two-prong is increasing humanitarian aid. They are going to open up Gaza to aid. They're going to deliver it through an American-Israeli mechanism, not the Israel Defense Forces, but other contractors, international contractors, because they recognize themselves that the storehouses of aid in Gaza, although they're being blocked by Hamas, blockaded by Hamas, whatever their explanation is, they are running low, and it's time to do something because the people are really facing a catastrophe there in Gaza. The biggest problem for Israel, I think, just overall, is that for many Israelis, when they look at Gaza, they say Gaza is Hamas and Hamas is Gaza. So it's very, very hard to kind of stir up what you need really in this case, which is empathy.
Laura Blumenfeld, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your insights.
Thank you.